Hello everyone, welcome to this session. I will still discuss about the food processing, preservation, and storage. We are still discussing about the various methods of food processing and preservation. We said there are two methods of them, traditional methods and the modern methods. So far in our previous video, we are discussing about the traditional methods. So in this video, let's move on to the modern methods. The modern methods of food processing and preservation. So these modern methods, these are just the methods that are used to process and preserve food, which require the use of technology. So technology is widely used in this kind of uh, food processing and preservation. So therefore, just some of these modern ways. The first one is the refrigeration and the freezing. Now, in this just the temporary storage of food at low temperatures of up to 4 degrees centigrade, just in order to slow down the growth of microorganisms. So storing the food at low temperatures just increase the likeliness of just slowing down the growth of these microorganisms that can cause the food to decay. Now, freezing, it involves the storing food at very low temperatures just in order to stop the growth of microorganisms. And just know that the frozen food can be kept for months. So the frozen food can just kept for a very long time because the growth of the microorganisms is slowed down. So in a way that they cannot cause the food to spoil. Now, the food that can be refrigerated, they include as follows: there's milk, fresh fruits, vegetables, juice, and butter. And freezing is mostly used for foods like meat, fish, fruits, and vegetables. So this is the first methods, the refrigeration and the freezing. Moving on, the second method is pasteurization. The pasteurization, this does this kind of a method of preservation was named after its inventor, that is Louis Pasteur. Uh, it involved the heating food to a very high temperatures for a very short time. Then, that just to kill the microorganisms that can cause the spoilage of the food. And as you can see here, are just some foods that have been stored by this kind of method, that is the pasteurization. Now, the pasteurization, it contains the nutrients contents and the flavor of the food, and the examples of the foods that can be pasteurized are the milk and the fruit juice. As you can see here, milk and also eggs can be pasteurized in a way that it helps to preserve the food and it maintains the nutrient contents and also uh, flavor of the food. Moving on. The third one is canning and bottling. In this kind of a method, food is preserved by heating it in airtight vacuum, sealed bottles, or cans. So in this kind of a method, the food is preserved in these uh, sealed bottles and cans with the certain kind of heated amount of temperature within an airtight vacuum. And the container is filled with the food, then the air is pumped out it from a vacuum. So that's how the food is kept or preserved in these containers. The container is also sealed and heated to kill the microorganisms and enzymes that, but not enough to overcook the food. So the heating uh, is just there just to kill the microorganisms and just not to overcook it, just to enable to preserve the nutrient content of the food. The food that can be bottled or canned include as follows: these tomatoes, fruit juice, beef, fish, and packed beans. So these are just examples of the foods that can be bottled or canned. Or the bottled or canned food can be kept also for months or even years. So that's the other benefit of this canning and bottling. That is, the food can be kept for a very, very long time. Moving on, the fourth modern method is using additives. This method, it involves the use of chemicals such as the sodium benzoate, sodium chloride, and vinegar, whereby they are added to the food just to slow down the growth of the microorganisms. So the additives are there just to slow down the growth of the microorganisms because these microorganisms are the ones that cause the decaying of the food. So slowing down the growth of them helps to preserve the food. So this kind of method is commonly done uh, to, to pressure fish and the meat. So these are just examples of foods that can be preserved with this kind of a method. The fifth method is drying. Also drying in the sun in the traditional method, but this is drying. Basically, it happens whereby the food is dried by using either hot blast of air from a vacuum dryer, and after drying, the food is then sealed in moisture-proof containers. As you can see here, these kinds of foods, they've been dried out and they've been put in these moisture-proof containers whereby moisture cannot enter the food, and in a way that the food is preserved for a very long time. And since there is no moisture, so there is no conducive environments for the growth of the microorganisms. So the food is kept very well without decaying, since the microorganisms they cannot grow in such kind of environments. The other method is the irradiation. In this kind of a method, is the one that involves the use of layers of energy to stop the growth of the microorganisms in the stored food. Examples are foods that can be preserved in this kind of method. It include as onions, beans, and potatoes. This makes food last like very longer time compared to the other methods, and it also prevents the sprouting in onions and potatoes. So this is the other method of modern this is the other modern method of preserving food, that is using of these layers of energy to stop the growth of the microorganisms, irradiation. Now let's see the advantages of the modern methods. Here are some of them. The first one, that food can last for many months and even a year. So food can last very longer time compared to the traditional methods. So in preserving food in the modern methods, it takes the food stored or preserved takes a longer time just to get it spoiled or decay. The second one, that the modern methods, they can process, preserve, and store large variety of food. So a large variety of foods, they can be stored with, or they can be processed or preserved in this kind of methods. So it takes place for a large variety of various foods that are out there, and you can preserve them for a very long time. The third one, that they are advanced technology, fast and can handle huge quantities of food. So the modern methods are very advanced technology methods whereby they can store and preserve the food fast and handle large quantities of food compared maybe to the traditional methods whereby there's certain kinds of amounts of foods that you can preserve them. In terms of the disadvantages, the chemicals used, they can be harmful if intaken in excess. So there are some chemicals that are used in the preservations whereby if they are consumed in excess, they can be harmful to our health. The second one, that these advanced technology involve means whereby they are used only in certain areas. For instance, the refrigeration, it requires electricity. So places where there's no electricity, you can't use this kind of a method. The third one, that the process used for example, the canning and the sterilizing requires special skills. Not any individual can carry out this kind of a process. So it requires certain kind of special skills, and that's why it can be carried out maybe in industries only, and not an individual cannot do it simply by himself. And last but not least, sometimes the nutrients are lost, thus lowering the nutritional value of the food. So some kind of nutrients, they can be lost during the process of preserving the foods using these kinds of the modern methods of food preservation and storage. So there you have it. That's all I have for this video. Basically, everyone, we've discussed the modern methods. We've seen some of them, and we've seen their advantages and their disadvantages. Thank you.